All right. I motion that, get my glasses on here. I motion that AMC 6E not support the zoning relief for 448 Ridge Street Northwest for the 4 new two-family residences.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Additional discussion? So, again, I believe that the only way that you're gonna develop this site is to grant the zoning relief. I'm confident that the Board of Zoning Adjustment will grant it regardless of what the AMC opines in this particular instance, because there's no other alternative for this to be developed, either as single-family houses or more densely. It is in a historic district, so there is no way that a curb cut, would be approved. So I would urge my colleagues to vote no on this particular motion. So, calling the vote, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
So if you're what you seconded, Marge, you would say aye if you support what I said. So meaning that we do not support the relief. If you do not support the relief, you would vote aye. If you support the relief, you would vote no. Everyone can vote however they want. This is free.
Okay, well, let's just do a show of hands to make it clear, and yes. So if you vote no to this motion, you
Support the relief.
support the relief, and we will have a second motion to support the relief.
So now we're gonna vote on not supporting the relief.
Okay?
All in
So,
favor?
all in favor by a show of hands, please.
Aye.
So we have 1, 2,
What is that?
3, 4.
4 ayes.
Okay. And then nays, I vote no. Mr. Williams votes no. So that motion carries. That's 4 to 2 to 0. So the commission has voted not to support the zoning relief as requested. All right.
All right.
Thank you, everyone, for hearing us.
Next is 416 Ridge Street Northwest. Request for historic preservation approval for renovation addition to existing building at this address. It's a very modest, project. And I hope that the applicant has some additional information as a result of consultation with the Historic Preservation Office so that we can expedite this.
Thank you.
Mine's a little late.
Oh, yeah.
So Dosick, if you can very quickly advise us of the results of your discussions with the Historic Preservation Office about your revised design, and then I'll ask the Zoning and Planning Committee Chair to report out on the committee's ask.
Well, can you?
Okay, short and sweet. This is a picture of our house right here, 416. This is for 14 right next to us. There's a house right here. And basically, we're looking down a little strip of land that's 9 feet 3 inches. And what we're doing is putting an addition onto the side, and then 35 or 40 feet back in the very rear of the yard, we're putting another structure. We're zoned R4, we can put by right 2 structures on the property. We do have curb cuts already, so we're not going in front of the BZA requesting the zoning relief whatsoever. We met with HPRB. Basically, they're in approval of the concept that we have. What we're voting on tonight is what the front of what you're going to see from the street will look like. Basically, the choices are 2 windows or 1 ganged window set.
That's the issue.
That's the issue.
2 windows or 1 window?
Stephen at HPRB suggested to try to see what it would look like with a ganged window. And that was the only suggestion he had. Other than
That's
that,
the
we
only
met
issue.
numerous times with HPRB on different design concepts, and this is the one that they finally went with. And then when we met with the committee last week in forum, they were in concurrence with what HPRB decided, but then I told HPRB that, and they said, can you look at the concept of the gained windows versus the non?
It's not a big deal, but we really feel that the separate windows is consistent with the rest of the block. The ganged window to us looks out of place. It's not a deal stopper, but we're down to the nitty gritty.
Let me just say
We
that,
can even make the windows smaller, to have two smaller ones up top,
nope, Donna,
but,
we're good to go, girl.
okay,
The
we'll go
committee,
either way.
the committee met last week, and it was consensual with all the members of the committee to go with the design that is on the left-hand side, with a little walkway and then the structure in the back. The committee supported this suggestion, knowing that historic and zoning and whomever else y'all went to were all in favor of that particular model out of the two models. So the committee chose to support this design.
And this is in my area, and the residents on the whole seem to like it, so there's a plus for Richmond.
Would you want to go ahead and make a motion?
Yes, so, I motion that ANC 60 support the request for historic preservation approval for the renovation addition of the existing building and the two windows.
The two separate.
The two separate windows.
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any further discussion on part of the commission? Any comments from the community? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
416,
Does
Rick.
that mean I won't see you at the next committee?
You will, but the one
So-
after that, I got my deployment orders.
Moving on to 600 block of Rhode Island Avenue Northwest, the commission recalls a presentation that was made by DC Water a number of months ago where they were seeking our input into the preliminary plans for the construction that will be temporarily eradicating Cooper Gordon Park, which is at 6th R on Rhode Island, and for its subsequent replacement. There are a number of different traffic impacts, including lane closures and the removal of parking over a number of months during this phase of construction, and they're also seeking input into the design of the park. So there were a number of exhibits that were outside of the meeting room. Hopefully folks had an opportunity to look at those and ask some questions. But we'll have a brief presentation from our friends at DC Water, and then on behalf of Commissioner Chapel, I will be making a motion.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Andrea Williams, Senior Public Outreach Officer for DC Clean Rivers Project. So as Chair Padro said, we're here today to speak to you about the Northeast Boundary Tunnel Project, specifically restorations to Cooper Gordon Park. So we have Justin Carl, he's one of our head engineers, also Joel Cantola, and my counterpart, Vicki Wilshire, is also here. So I'm going to turn it over to Justin.
So last time we met, we were in the environmental assessment phase of the project, which means we were gathering public input as part of our planning for the Northeast Boundary Tunnel. It's about 8 months ago, I would say, the last time we were out here in April to meet about the project. This ANC sent DC Water a very detailed letter on certain things they would like to see the park incorporate and as part of the restoration, as well as some construction mitigations during construction. So just a really quick background of the project. This is DC Water's been planning this project since 1999. The Northeast Boundary Tunnel will start just south of RFK Stadium, run 5 miles up along Mount Olivet Cemetery, and then run down Rhode Island Avenue and terminate at 6th and R Street northwest. The main purpose of the tunnel is to relieve flooding that's been a chronic issue in this area of Washington, D.C. since the early 1900s. The other benefit of the project, it will convey combined sewer overflows and reduce them to the Anacostia River by 98%. So we're really focusing tonight on 6th and R. If you have any questions, we can hang outside for a bit after the presentation. Feel free to walk out and ask us any other questions about the project. So just to zoom in on what we're talking about, at 6th and R, this is a 23-foot diameter tunnel, 100 feet deep. Will terminate at 6th and R, and a 38-foot diameter shaft that's also about 60 feet deep. That shaft serves two purposes. We'll remove the tunnel boring machine from that location, and then in its permanent operation, we'll take flow from the existing sewer and drop it into that shaft where it will be conveyed all the way to Blue Plains for treatment. We also have a ventilation control facility along Rhode Island Avenue to allow air in and out of the tunnel as it fills up during a rain event and as it gets pumped out at Blue Plains. Just to note, the northeast boundary portion of the tunnel is not designed to fill up in this area. It's just a conveyance sewer, like many of the CSOs, combined sewers and storm sewers in this area. Have a little 3D view of the facility here at the bottom of the page. You can see the shaft, diversion chamber, and ventilation control facility. But what we're really here to talk about is our construction takes up about a half acre right in Cooper Gordon Park. So Cooper Gordon Park is Rhode Island, 6th and R Streets. Our construction work will, as Mr. Padro mentioned, will pretty much obliterate the park for a period of about 3 years. One of the comments we got during our planning phase was that we should retain traffic along R Street. We'll have to close R Street for a short 3-month period. That includes the bike lane and the street. And then following that, for the remaining 33 months, the street will be open to traffic as normal. So just looking at the restoration plan of the park, you can see we're keeping the existing shape of the park as was envisioned by LaFont. It's one of the triangle parks that was originally owned by the Park Service. We're going to completely hardscape the entire perimeter of the park, put in new curbs, new brick, and then plantings across the entire park as well. Around the edges of the park, we have 3 bioretention areas. They're essentially rain gardens to treat stormwater to meet District Department of Environment standards. So you'll see those on the perimeter of the park. DC Water will maintain those facilities, as well as the underground tunnel structure long term. For the interior of the park, one of the major comments we got from the ANC was irrigation. So we will be installing an irrigation system for the Triangle Park. That way the plants will be able to be established, and irrigation will continue throughout the first 2-year period as these plants mature. After that period, we'll turn the park back over to Department of Parks and Recreation to maintain. During those initial 2 years, we'll provide training to DPR to maintain the plants. Just some of the highlights of the park. We're going to keep the look at the willow oaks, 2 big willow oaks in the middle of the park. Along the park pathway, we have a bunch of crepe myrtles too. So we have a whole detailed palette and planting plan that we have available in a bunch of handouts. We welcome comments on that. We're looking to get comments by around October 31st, so we can respond and incorporate any changes to the park that the community wants to see. One of the other things we're adding are a few benches that were requested as part of the restoration as well. And just to show some renderings, a couple views of the park, what it will look like. This is a springtime rendering here, looking from the corner of R Street towards Rhode Island Avenue. And again, I mentioned the crepe myrtles here in the background, the 2 willow oaks beyond it, and then some plantings around the perimeter of the park as well. Another view looking from Rhode Island Avenue, looking at the triangle portion of the park. You can see we're maintaining the pathway. And then another view looking from R Street, where we're going to have one of the bioretention areas. One of the things we're going to do when we restore the park, we're going to remove and sandblast, repaint the historic fence in there. We're going to maintain the plaque for Ms. Cooper, and then add a secondary plaque. We're going to work with the ANC on honoring Lillian Gordon. The final thing we're also going to work with the community on is public art. Between the 2 willow oaks, we're leaving an area for public art. We're going to set aside a fund of $75,000 to work with the ANC and Arts and Humanities to commission a piece of artwork from somebody in the community to be able to install that artwork in the park. I think we hit on all the topics that we had on the EA, Mr. Padro, but if there's anything I missed, please let me know.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'll call you after we've dealt with any questions from the commission, sir. Thank you. So, how much do you say was the funding available for the artwork?
$75,000.
$75,000 doesn't buy much.
Okay.
I mean, we're going to be hearing from 2 potential grantees from the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities a little later. And for example, the sculpture of Dr. Woodson that's going to be going in Woodson Park was $150,000. The sculpture that's the neon sculpture that's in front of the Walter T. Daniel Library was $150,000. That's like the threshold for a project. So your budget is woefully too low in order to be able to accomplish that.
Okay.
So, but
We'd appreciate if you guys could send us a comment letting us know.
we certainly will after we make a motion. We also hear from our constituents. So, and thank you for incorporating the irrigation. That was a significant issue that we did raise, and so we're grateful for incorporation there. Now, one of the things that we heard a lot, and again, I'm speaking for Commissioner Chapel, who again, unfortunately, can't be here because of a family health emergency. Is the timing and the length of the closure of that segment of R Street on the 600 block of R Street. The good folks that live on that block obviously are very concerned. I'm glad that we had at least one of them here this evening. Are very concerned about their ability to access their property, where they're going to be able to park, among two significant concerns, but also I think rather than just my enumerating potential issues, I think I'd rather actually hear from one of the affected neighbors. So unless anyone from the commission has anything else that
A couple of questions that I don't remember. You probably told us, but you know me, old. Who owns the park?
The park is owned by Department of General Services. It's maintained by Department of Parks and Recreation,
National or DC?
DC.
DC owns that park. The land has already been transferred.
General Services, yes.
in
Okay.
1972.
Okay, I'm just checking because other issues have come up with other things. Is there any reason why you chose DPR to maintain? Because they don't maintain what they have now.
Well, we're gonna maintain it for 2 years as DC Water, and then we're gonna turn it back over to General Services at the end of that 2 years. It's their park. We can't take over their park.
Yeah, but we can all suggest some better. I just think that, you know, when you turn it back over, it's gonna go downhill from there because DPR does not keep up with the parks it has now, DPR. To turn over a brand-new, beautiful park to an organization that is not gonna do any upkeep doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You go, right?
We don't have the authority to maintain a
No, I
take over
understand, but maybe
eminent
we,
domain and maintain a
I
park.
think maybe we need to talk some more about who would be maintaining it, because it's foolish to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to beautify a park, and then in 2 years' time, all the trees and flowers will be dead because they don't have the manpower or the money to do the upkeep.
Understood.
Okay, last question, the closing of R Street. I can tell you that the closing of Mass Avenue for 3 hours for construction about a week and a half ago caused such chaotic traffic jams all the way back to Union Station. I mean, I can't tell you how much it was a disaster to close this road for 3 months. Is there any other alternative?
So, can people up here the board? So, there's an alternative, but it's not, nobody's gonna like it, but we can. The location of this structure is governed by where the existing sewer is under the street. So the sewer is the green line, kind of runs right under the north side of the sewer kind of runs right under the curb of the park. It's 8'6" in diameter. So when we go in there to put our structure in, there's a very, very small portion of the street left from the curb to the edge of the structure. In order to build the structure, we need to put some sort of temporary support in the ground. Sometimes that's sheet piles, sometimes that's concrete structures we have to put in the ground to be able to support the ground while we build the structure. In order to have room and maintain the street while we do that, we have to take out the tree boxes on the south side of the street. There's some old growth trees in there, we don't want to do that. So our best alternative was to have a temporary closure of the street. 3 months on our is the most we think it's going to be closed. We're going to enter a collaboration period with some contractors next year, and we'll try and see if we can get that down to less than 3 months. But right now, 3 months is what we think it'll take just to get that wall in there in order to build the structure.
And the last thing is, if you close it for 3 months and you rip up everything, are you getting in touch with other folks who might also have to rip up the street to put in whatever they need to put in before.
Yes.
I mean, I live on K Street and they did a whole new streetscape and it's gorgeous, and then somebody said, electrical wires need to be
That-
underground, so they
that's a
ripped
great
up the
point.
whole
They did that on
street.
14th Street.
It's a great point.
And we have a number of different, like FiOS and all
Yeah.
these other
Yeah.
things. Can you
We are-
get, so, I mean, that 3 months would mean a whole lot more if people knew that after 3 months, the street is not gonna be torn up again for electrical wires and for Verizon and for cable TV and for whomever else needs to get in that street. And last comment, are you gonna repave the street nicely when you're done?
So for the utilities, we're currently coordinating with Verizon, Comcast, Pepco, Washington Gas. There are utilities we'll have to move as part of this work, and at that time, we want the utility agencies to do any upgrades so we don't have to come back and disturb the community again. As part of, the restoration, we will be restoring curb to curb. We'll be putting down standard DDOT, concrete, asphalt pavement, new curbs, new gutters.
Okay.
Ma'am?
Just a question that's come up since you've been talking, so the 3 months, I know it's a long way out, but the 3 months you're looking at having the street closed would be approximately December of 2016, January of 2017, and February of 2017?
So construction starts, the contractor gets notice to proceed in December 2016. They probably won't mobilize onto this site until later in the contract phase, because it is the end of the tunnel. So somewhere out in the range of 2018, 2022 is when we'll have to be implementing this closure.
2018?
Around there, probably.
So just, it's a long way out, but planning that for when there isn't street cleaning, like the 3 months, or the months during the year between, I think it's November and March, in that area where people don't have to move their cars twice a week, because you're gonna be eliminating parking along
Correct.
that way. It would be ideal.
Ms. Gaten Ivory?
How is this gonna affect our water while y'all tearing up everything?
We're gonna maintain services as you have them today.
Yeah,
There might be short outages when
saying
we have to
that
do
now.
relocation.
Structural engineering. Who was up there that's involved with structural engineering? You got an impacted area of 6th Street already that's going into 1200 block of 6th Street. You got a problem right there already. So now if you're gonna talk about closing R Street is so congested right now. Trying to cross R Street to get to the other side to 7th Street, it's a problem already. Now you're talking about closing up, now you got a gridlock there, and you got a traffic jam there, you're talking about a mess. You're not gonna be able to, man, this thing here is a bulldog. And I'm sorry to say what you said there, but I'm looking at it. We have structural engineers here, right here. All right, and you have evaluated it with the city?
Yeah, so two things we're doing. We're doing a traffic study, which we started 6 months ago with DDOT. We understand that we're gonna have traffic impact with this project, but it's something we're required to build as part of a court order.
Why did it drop to the public then?
I'm sorry?
Why wasn't it getting to the public so the public
It's not
can be?
complete yet.
Oh,
So
well,
we did an environmental assessment that included traffic impacts that was made available to the public since February. So that information's out there.
It's out there, and the people that live there, do the people in the area,
It's out there.
the people know?
We presented here.
People do not know about this, that's why I call it boondoggle.
Sir, can I
Because the people
respond
don't know
to you?
anything about this.
Sir, can I respond to your question? DC Water has advised us that they put a flyer about a meeting last week in the doors of every household in the area. So how many, Ms. Williams, how many flyers do you know, how many were put out?
In the area, I sent out at least 300.
So about 300 flyers were put out to the neighbors. I presume some folks got them, and I see some nods, so some folks didn't receive it. So, sir, you're gonna have the last question.
Yes, sir, my question is, I'm talking traffic all afternoon. Ours is a major street going from east to the west, all the way across town. You got 4th Avenue, where's the traffic gonna go?
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna detour traffic back at 7th to Rhode Island Avenue.
Oh.
So we're working with DDOT right now to come up with acceptable detour routes. We're working with DDOT.
It's already congested.
We understand that.
Just making it go from bad to worse.
We understand that. There will be some.
I live in the area.
We understand
And I
that.
see it, I'm a truck driver and a bus driver.
We understand
All
that.
over the city.
So we're trying to mitigate these impacts as much as possible. That's why we're working on a traffic study right now. We're working on, somebody mentioned parking, we're working on a parking
The
analysis.
people
right
study,
now.
do they live in the area or they come in and just do a survey and go back home?
I'm sorry?
So the contractors, I'm sure, do not.
I'll do the survey and just go back home to the
So-
suburb.
He's saying.
If he's in here,
So,
it's different.
Through the study, he's asking, are there people who are?
Do they live here in the
Are they
state? Same
DC?
time,
No, I
just
would-
come in and study and go back.
I live here, I mean, I live in the district, so I understand, we're studying the traffic impacts. Again, we're trying to mitigate them as much as we can, but he's right, we are gonna have traffic impacts as part of this work. But we are trying to mitigate them as much as possible. You can't build a $600 million job and not have traffic impacts in an urban area at this point. So we are working, we're gonna work with the community, we wanna come out and meet with the blocks, we wanna meet with the residents in each block, we wanna hear your concerns. But we know traffic is a big issue on this job, so we are mitigating it as much as possible.
That's a pedestrian
Correct.
traffic. Is there sidewalk closures during
We
this period?
will be closing the sidewalks in the park,
Still
but
crossing
we'll,
the street.
you'll still be able to cross ours, through our street and Sixth Street.
so I wish that we had as many people interested in asking questions about this when we had a meeting specifically on it last Tuesday in the Wabauta Daniel Library. A block
It's
away from the
interesting, I
site.
gotta do that.
But,
Who's
yes,
the resident that lived along our street that's at the meeting tonight?
Christine.
yeah, she's right in front of you.
Okay, great.
I'm on 6, not ours.
So, excuse me,
So,
Mr. Chairman, this gentleman here
Unfortunately,
is,
we
this gentleman is.
do need to move the agenda,
Okay.
so,
Can I make
in
one
the
comment?
absence of, Ms. Mitchell represents Councilmember Wells' office.
I just want to make a couple of comments about how important this project is to the health and future goals of the Anacostia River. As you all know, we're hoping that one day that'll be a swimmable, livable, place for the district's go to. Restoring that river is a major concern. And this project is making its way over to you. But everybody from way up there down here has had to make some sacrifices in each of these communities. We've had subways built, we've had lots of things built that are part of our infrastructure that we all have to struggle with, trying to deal with, while we make our city better. The other thing I want to clarify is that when a park is put under the inventory of the recreation department, this does not mean they maintain it.
We know that.
DGS is responsible for all property the city owns. So they're the ones who are responsible for maintaining that park. If any activity ever occurred, programming, etc., that would be on the DPR. But they have nothing to do with keeping it, because we built it wrong.
That's like 8th Street.
All right, I am going to make a motion that Advisory Neighborhood 6E communicates the continued concerns related to parking and traffic related to the construction of the site, and then working with the District Department of Transportation, those negative impacts be mitigated to the greatest extent possible by minimizing the amount of time that there actually will be closures on the adjacent streets. And is there anything else that anyone else would like to add to that motion? And that we communicate that to the Director of DC Water and the Director of the Department of Transportation. And I would ask for a second. Been properly moved and seconded, any further discussion by the commission? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. It's unanimous, thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll look forward to continuing to work with you over the next several years to try to make this, have the least impact possible on the neighbors. Next is 655 New York Avenue. This is a major development by Douglas Development Corporation that's going to be transforming most of the block in question. And it's
Just for the whole project.
So there's a public space application related to the improvements that are intended to match those in the Montgomery Triangle.
Yeah, what we have is a very, is there a, oh, okay. Okay.
Please proceed.
All right, good evening, how's everybody? My name is Drew Turner, I'm with Douglas Development. This is Tim Arnold from Shalom Bronis. They're our lead architect on this project.
Doug, excuse me. Could y'all step outside if you're having a conversation so that we can hear the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you. We're here today to present on the public space application for the public space improvements associated with the project. Just so everybody's familiar with the project, it's the corner of New York Avenue and 7th Street, and then also runs along L Street. It is not the entire block. It's the half of the block closest to 7th Street. So today we want to run through the proposed curb cuts, the new paving plans, the planning plans, any bike racks, and then also the new curb cuts for the loading docks and the garage entrance and exit. One thing that I want to point out that's not shown on here, and it's also not in 11 by 17 there, is just what the existing curb cut condition is, which I think is important to keep in mind. On New York Avenue right now, there are 5 curb cuts along New York Avenue, and then there are another 3 along L Street. And what we're proposing now is to eliminate all the curb cuts on New York Avenue. There'll still be access into this alley. That's where our property line stops. But there will be 3 new curb cuts here on L Street. So, yes. So Tim's going to jump into some more of the details on really the whole public space and the improvements. So go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tim Arnold from Shalom Bronis. On 7th Street here, we're right across from the convention center, and there's a whole series of historic buildings. Most of them are in pretty decent shape, and the sidewalk has also been restored recently, so we're not impacting 7th Street much at all. On New York Avenue,
one thing before he jumps off 7th Street, the one thing we will be impacting on 7th Street is we will be putting in a new entrance to our building, which in order to do that, we will have to tear up this entranceway here. We'll be putting back in the exact same material that was there before.
and there probably are also some minor utility connections that have to be dealt with. Then on New York Avenue, for the whole front of our property, we'll be removing all of the concrete that's there, and we'll be reintroducing a concrete pattern, and the slopes will all be corrected so that it's appropriate for handicapped people and folks who are using wheelchairs. We'll also be installing 3 large tree pits. They're about 12 feet wide and very large, and then 4 street trees. And the transformer vaults will be enclosed in the tree pits. And there'll also be about 16 feet of clear sidewalk in front of the building. In front of one of the historic buildings,